of having Professor Dr. Egon Spiegel, who is a very familiar figure here in global peace. And he will be taking us through a very important topic, which is basic facets of peace studies. I would like now also to ask to everybody, please to mute your microphones and let the person who is speaking only keep the microphone on. And Professor H.C. Egon Spiegel is a professor of pastoral theology at the University of Vechta in Germany. And he has also studied and specialized in political science and theology, which for some people is a rare combination. He has also authored a number of books and numerous articles, particularly on peace, nonviolence. And one of the books he co-authored with Professor Liu Cheng, who is also here with us today. Nice to have you also, Liu Cheng. And that book is Peace Studies in a Globalizing World. And of course, also the latest one that was recently published by Springer, which is Peace Studies for Sustainable Development in Africa, which some of you contributed to, like Helen Ware, etc., and others. So it's really a pleasure having you, Egon Spiegel. Now the floor is yours. Please continue.
Thank you so much, George. Dear participants, welcome to our webinar. Let me begin with a short history of the webinar. Actually, we had the idea to give a course for the contributors of our first book. George showed it. We wanted to give a solid and serious common base for this common book about peace building and especially a common understanding of peace and nonviolence. You know, a lot of some participants know it, that we could offer one course after another, though the idea of this webinar got an own dynamic. At first, by the amazing organization and moderation of George Mutalemwa, we could win a lot of speakers until today, until now more than 70. And end is not in sight. I hope so. Just now, some words to the perspective. Recently, the government of Lower Saxony in Germany, this is the province where I'm living, has approved a new project in order to support our webinar and other activities. Perhaps, George, you can say something about these activities the government will support.
Yeah, thank you very much, Egon. This is definitely very good news to us all as we try and establish this network, peace and development in Africa, where we have a series of webinars, but we'd like to do more than webinars, and particularly would like to organize a conference, which will be an international conference, and we hope that we can manage to have it organized this year, where we will invite you and the rest of the people who would like to contribute chapters and make presentations. Eventually, of course, we'll be able to put our proceedings in a book, and therefore we wish that we'll continue doing the publications as well as webinars and conferences. So maybe other ideas can be shared with you later on. But for the moment, I think that's it. Thank you, Egon.
Thank you, George. Let me return to the idea I told. The course I mentioned should be based on the book of my Chinese colleague, Liu Zhang, and me. We published this book in a very famous publishing house in Beijing some years ago in Chinese and English, with a lot of pictures and comments to about 200 issues and topics. So based on slides, we usually use in our lectures, we used and we are using in our lectures. And some facets of the course I'd like to share with you. But let me make a preliminary remark to the central aspect, the huge horizon of our book, globalization. Maybe you are sharing the meaning that our world is just now changing from globalization to deglobalization. At first, actually, I think globalization is not stoppable. Globalization is a reality. Look to the young people, to the fashion, to the music, to sports, to tourism, to academic network, to our network. This is a global initiative. This is a reality. We know it very, very well. But look also to technique, to our ecological problems worldwide, and also to economy, to trade, the need of worldwide trade. So I really want to focus that the globalization is a reality. Also, I think we will realize that the development of nationalisms is an impasse, a political box canyon, and we will become aware of our error. And I think we will discover the truth, the treasure, and the value of globalization very soon. And we will return to the level of globalization we got as soon as possible. Okay, we can discuss the time, how long it needs to return to the level we had some years ago, but 2 years ago. On the background of our current experiences, I think we will work very hard for re-globalization, or the next generation will work hard for re-globalization. And I think more than that, we will even strengthen the process. And of course, it will last like the rebuilding of a destroyed country by war. We just now are in a phase of destroying globalization. So, and like war, it's easier to destroy something than to rebuild it. And I think it's like a country after war, and so, but we will rebuild globalization. Yeah, let me start with some facets. It's a selection. I told you we wrote about 200 issues, and I selected some. And I think Liu Zhang will give comments too, so we can do it a little bit together, like we did it and do it a lot of times in China and in America and in other lectures. At first, we have to make a difference between system immanent and system transcendent peace research, peace education, and peace activism. Our book is based on a system transcendent peace research. It means we are really thinking out of the box. We are thinking not like militaries, for example, or yes, or people in government. We are really looking for solutions out of the box. The framework of our book is the decade of the United Nations in the millennium in 2000. And you see the time is limited of 2 years, 10 years, but the task is never ending. So culture of peace and non-violence, and we could also say as non-violence. It's very interesting that is the United Nations in this decade mention that peace means non-violence. So usually we use peace, only as peace, and we are free to define it in such direction or in another. But the United Nations defined it and bring it together, linked it with non-violence for the children of the world. And this is a task not only linked to this beginning 10 years of the new millennium. This is a never-ending task. And so we put our book and the intention of the book in this framework, in this frame. Perhaps this book of these are colleagues of Liu Chang. They are professors for world history. Foucault's the situation. The situation when we wrote our book, this was 2015. So we were very affected by the idea of globalization. Just now a little bit disillusioned or so, like this. You know what I mean? And this book is really a very wonderful book because it figure out that we are in a situation of human web. Actually, the status to research peace, to act in this sense, and to educate peace is very good. Actually, we are in a situation like a human web. So these two guys, father and son, McNeil, pointed out. If you want to have this view, you should leave the view we know very well from our study in school. Though we learned history by jumping from one empire to the other and from one war to the other, and we had to learn years combined with special persons, usually warriors and empires. But actually we should also mention and regard as a social history. It's really very difficult to find a social history because you must look for seeds and plants and for fires and not for weapons and for stones. It's much more easier to find stones and weapons and to reconstruct history by these. So, but if we would change our perspective to social history, so I think we could follow the McNeil, the two McNeils, to the position that we are just now on a very good status to realize peace in a global sense. So also we are very fixed on destruction and negative things, usually we demonstrate the necessity of changing our perspective by showing our students a paper. In the middle of the paper is a dot, and usually when we ask what you are looking, though the people see a dark point, but the next one or five students later, the fifth usually say, I see a dark point on a white field. So this is the intention of our asking, to demonstrate that usually we are very fixed on the dark side of life. And therefore, we point out by this picture, for example, that actually our life is dominated by social cohesion, usually. Though by traffic, you see, we are ready to organize traffic. We are looking for truth, for a solution in lot of discussions and long discussions. And so you see the surgeons here, we heal the people, we want to be healed. Though on the left you see a couple kissing, this is the daily life. And on the bottom you see a group of Liujiang, students of Liujiang and me, sitting together, talking together, eating together. And on the right, there is Lily Tukula from Nigeria, George, a follower of you, also a Höfmann docent of intercultural competence. And the next picture, sports. This is a reality. And this circle of people in Santa Barbara, in the middle, I think it's the lecture. This is a reality. And also our relationship to animals. And in the middle, you see, this is a monkey.
Mr. Babsy, how can you say you've not been to this office before?
Sorry, I say somebody's eyes. Okay, though this is a monkey, and this child is passed away eight days before, but the mother cannot. The people want to separate this mother from the child because it's not from hygiene, and hygiene is actually not allowed. But they couldn't do that. So strong is the social cohesion, even in the world of animals. Though we have to point out that against the dark side of life, we usually focus. You see here, this is the paper we usually show the students. So in this picture, we figure out that. And we ask, but we figure out that actually our students not living on the level of ego, means my culture, my nation, my religion. And also our students are not in a position to live only in a coexistence to others, beside and beside and beside, much more in on the level of interaction. I told that the academic I spoke about the academic network, for example, and you remember the sitting our groups together, once I can tell you, we brought Liujiang and me. We brought our students together in a room in small groups with a task to change experience and perspectives and so on. And we drink, meanwhile, we drank coffee and green tea. And after 1 hour, we returned and we asked, I asked the people, the students, what are the differences? Actually, I should remember that I asked some years ago Polish students and German students, and the students some years ago told me, sorry, sir, okay, the conductor is a little bit stronger in Poland than in Germany, though they want to give me an answer when I asked them for differences, like in China. So Leo and me, we entered the room and I asked the students for differences, and the students said, sorry, sir, we want to study, want to have good professors, we want to have friendship, we want to have a family, we want to have a good remarks in a good job, and we have also same ecological problems. So we cannot understand your question. We are sitting in the same boat, and therefore we created a fourth level of trance, and we would like to highlight that actually our students, by their feeling and by their orientation, they are living in a trance. So once Chinese students in my university in Germany win a karaoke competition because they interpreted it and sang much more better Beatles songs than the German students. Yeah, so we are living in a trance. I know some people are living on the base of ego, all in Germany, all over the world, but more and more the reality is defined by trance. So, and all this means we have to go from the discussion about diversity to the discussion of university. So since 2 or 3 decades, we used to discuss diversity very intensive, especially in the academic world. I know the motivation, and the motivation is pretty good, to accept the other in his others or in her others and so on. But actually it's counterproductive. Actually, we should ask at first for the universals, for the university. And after that, we can ask for diversities on the base of university. So our book is very defined by the research of universals. We bring this out by this picture, for example. It means that actually, in a cultural way, we are the villager of perhaps German and villagers of China much more linked and on the same level in thinking, feeling, working for their existence or sub-existence than the villager in Germany and the people living in the town. So the townsperson in Germany and China much more closer than the townsperson in Germany and the villager in Germany, or the townsperson in China and in rural side. So actually our thinking about culture is much more defined in a horizontal way and not in a vertical way. This is very important for peace education and also to criticize war, because war is very linked on a vertical understanding of culture. And this culture is maybe fixed on on language, on history, maybe, but actually we are very linked in our social world. So the beaten women or the beaten woman in Mwanza feels like the beaten woman in Berlin, and the people they are forced to look for bottles to make money with the bottles. It's the same situation in Germany, like in Africa or in Asia or in America. Also uneducated people or rich people and poor people. Though the poor people in Germany feels like the poor people in China, and the rich people is very linked with the rich people in China or all over the world. So we changed our understanding of culture, interest, to have a good base to criticize war. So there are another pictures that want to demonstrate it. So I will go to these pictures from artist from Nigeria. At first you will see, heads, different heads, different by forms and different by colors. So this is our first impression, but actually this is not the main point. The main point is that there are 4 women, that there are 4 men. And so we are very fixed on details. And from these details, we used to construct our opinion. This is very, very dangerous, sometimes very dangerous. At a very special point, we need to be aware of these differences. But actually, we are very united united. So our view to religions is also dominated by this idea. So at first we are asking for common grounds, and after we know these common grounds, we are ready to ask for specialities. So if you go at first to the common ground, you take away the explosion of a dialogue and communication. And on the base of common ground, it makes no problem to be interested for specialities you have. And I'm sure you are also interested in my specialities, but everything on the common ground. Our next point or facet of our book is the confederation instead of separation. Brexit, for example, is an antagonism. Makes no sense in a world of globalization, of international trade, and of a peaceful neighborhood after a war, as First and Second World War, a peaceful neighborhood of French and England and also Germany and so on. It's an antagonism, and so our plea goes to accept the borders and bring a balance or a balance out the interests of central political government and the interests of the single provinces and states. So this is a huge problem to bring them in a balance. So we have a lot to do in country. So the problems are not solved, but separation, going back to make the world smaller and to separate it in parts, smaller and smaller, smaller is the wrong way. So we have to bring smaller parts together in agreements, in contracts, and so on. So let me make an excursion on this point to Ukraine. When we wrote our book, it was some years. It lasts some years, but we finished it in 2014, and so we know the war in Ukraine, and we warned that there is a very dense network of nuclear power plants, and it's very dangerous to make a war there. So we wrote about this about two pages, and we gave an idea. We said actually we could solve the problem by double federalism, political administrative federalism in Ukraine, including the provinces where the people is dominated by Russian speaking people or parts, seldom dominated, but 20% or 30%, sometimes more than 50% ever, but usually 20 or 30% Russian speaking people. But in this case, of course, this also this province must be linked with Kiev, with the central of Ukraine, by administrative political federalism. But this does not exclude cultural federalism from Russia. So this cultural federalism can jump over the border to Ukraine and can integrate the Russian speaking people there. So we have on the one side the political administrative federalism, and on the other side a cultural federalism by language and same culture and so on. So this is actually not a difference. So we figured out this in our book, but so as you know, the people will not listen to us. I think the idea is really good, and it could be really a goal, and help to perhaps to solve the problem. But the interests of the governments are different, and go far from this what we thought as a solution. So this is a core slide in our book, and combined with a provocation that we will finish war and we will abolish war in the world in 2075, perhaps earlier. But it's a provocation, we know it. But 1 year before we abolished slavery in North America, in USA, also people could say, you will never abolish it. This goal, you will never reach it. But we got it. Of course, I know slavery is everywhere, and the problem is that we will return to a zone we have tabooized. Yeah. So we we tabooized, we make slavery a taboo, but we are sometimes there is the attempt or the temptation to jump back and to go into this taboo zone, but we got it, and we changed from geocentric thinking of world to heliocentric. So we could get it. We tabooized murder. We learned a lot also in an ecological way, and in a feminist view on world. A lot of we figured out children conventions and children rights, and a lot of things. And on the base of this, we are ready to create a taboo zone where war is over. So just know we have the discussion between for war, against war. We have this discussion, but once we will have a point of no return, we can see it in the history. And this is our belief on the base of human web, son and father Neil, human web, globalization. On the background of this and re-globalization, we will figure out this taboo zone. We are very convinced, and we are also convinced on the background that the people more and more are not able to fight and to kill and to be aware that my neighbors is killed. So more veterans, Vietnam veterans, killed themselves after the war than they were killed in the war. Also in the, the 1980, the war between Britain and Argentina, 400 soldiers were killed, but more than 400 soldiers lost their life by suicide, killed themselves after returned to Britain. So the human is much more sensitive than before. My father, he was a soldier in the war. Fortunately, he could alive, but he came from a farmer. He grew up in a farm. He could kill animals, and so I think people they know how they can kill animals and so on, are much more prepared to kill also people. But now our soldiers learned killing perhaps on computer by computer games, and they killed thousands of people, but never saw an open stomach or an open brain, head, or a cut arm and leg and so on. So the people actually are not able in future to kill, and so we have this phenomenon, post-traumatic stress disorder. I think I mustn't tell about this. Everybody knows this, but this is a huge problem. Also, it was also a problem in the First and Second World War. The soldiers returned and they couldn't talk about what happened because nobody can understand. Even my wife cannot understand me. Even I want to discuss it with her, to tell her, she's not able to understand it. She never was a witness of this. And so I only can tell it, I can talk about what I experienced with my friends and other soldiers. So a lot of people looked for a solution by drinking alcohol, for example, after the war. But now we have other solutions. You can go to a psychological expert and so on. But another background of our idea that we will abolish war is we can do it. We are ready. We are able. We have the capability to do that. So this is on the left. You see, this is what's the name? Cemetery, and of Jewish people. And you see in it, this is a sign for the protection of cultural property, and this is not allowed to destroy this place. So the pilots have it in their map. They cannot bomb this part of this village, and also you cannot go with a tank and destroy this field, but you can destroy the house beside. So our argument is that if we can keep this zone secure, so we can do it also with the house and the people, they are living there. So we have the capability to do that. And a very good example is the establishing of the international safety zone in Nanjing, when the Japanese government, the Japanese soldiers occupied parts of China and also especially Nanjing. You know that under the leadership of the German John Rabe, he was the representative of Siemens in China, in Nanjing. Under his leadership and with in the cooperation with American people, they resist not to return to America or to Germany, also nuns. It was possible to establish an international safety zone. Even the Japanese soldiers were very brutal and killed a lot of people, maybe 300,000 people in 6 weeks, but they accepted. Not totally, but they accepted these security zones. Sometimes they broke in and took women, for example, for sexuality and so on. But although this, very often I told my students, my female students, that it is the reality of war, and you don't mention it enough, you don't regard it enough. Yeah. So they not every time this security zone functioned, but actually it functioned. So we are able and to do this. So these are arguments, some arguments for our provocation that we will abolish war latest in 2075. So I told you, the Convention of the Rights of the Child, Universal Declaration of Human, we are able to do this, yeah? And a lot of more. In our book, we have other examples. So, and we can do it also with war. Oh, sorry, I forgot the time, and I cannot see how.
We are doing well. We are doing well. We still have about
how many
20 minutes for presentation.
Okay,
20,
so
20 minutes more, right?
Okay, thank you very much, George.
That's all right.
We don't deny the responsibility to protect. Vice versa, we are for the responsibility to protect, but there are a lot of other means than we usually think. So not only weapons, military is our way to protect ourselves. Let us look to the lessons we got by Gandhi, also by Martin Luther King and Abdul Ghaffar Khan. So they learned us, Gandhi, for example, figured out, wrote a lot of, also especially in his autobiography, about the chances and the possibilities of non-violent action and non-violent defense. But this is also a problem, because looking to Gandhi, we think non-violent action is a special strategy or a tactic of high reflected people, very experienced people, like holy people, like Mohandas, Karamchand, Gandhi. He didn't like the word Mahatma, but to learn non-violence and non-violent actions by Gandhi and King is very suggestive. It means that you must be like a holy person. So we, our plea is for finding examples of non-violence and non-violent action in the daily life. We only have to look to the left and to the right, and also be aware of our own experiences, not only the dark side of our life, also the bright side. And we will find a lot of examples how we can deal with our problems, with conflicts, on the base of non-violence and non-violent action. Actually, we need a second revolution. The first revolution we got by Gandhi, of course, but we need a second revolution by figuring out non-violence and non-violent action in our life, and not only on the level of, or in the area of interaction, but also in the area of structures. So we have insurance, for example. So insurance is a non-violent structure. So we can, and we have a lot of things. I told about surgeons and so, and our life is based on actually non-violent structures, but we have to discover them. Non-violence, we have to discover non-violence in interaction and also in structures. I read a book about small talks in the street. 2 volumes of these talks were recorded, and colleagues interpreted these talks. And small talks also is non-violence. Yeah? So we have to discover it everywhere. Wherever we are looking for, we can find non-violence in our daily life. And this is very important for our peace education, to bring out this, to give people, we have dealing with them to discover this non-violence. So we also have a lot of books, libraries, thousands of books with the content of general reflections on non-violence, and also with very special studies to non-violence. For example, study of the resistance of Norwegian people against Hitler. So very special studies. And you know, Gene Sharp, I think at first collected examples. We know it by history, and he bring it in an escalation system. I think I have this system too, but not by Jean Sharp, by a German professor, Theodor Ebert. He brought the idea of nonviolence very strong to Germany by a dissertation in 1968. He studied also in America. Has a lot of contact. Now he's 85 years old, some days before. And in one of his books, he created this system of escalation. You see on the first level, and this is like the escalation system. You can read it by Jean Sharp before Theodor Ebert figured out this one. So you see there the first level is protest. On the subversive side, you must know non-violence means not only to say no. You must only say yes to an alternative, and you must highlight the alternative, like the civil rights movement. So a lot of discussion, not only against, but also sit-in and discussing in the universities how we can solve the problem. Yeah? So on the one side, you have the protest, on the other side, you have functional demonstration. How, if we say no to this system, how we can create another system, yeah? Or also if we can create other ways. So legal non-cooperation, on the other side, legal innovation of roads, and so on. Not only civil disobedience, but civil usurpation. So very, very important is that there's an escalation system of nonviolence and nonviolent actions, and also two sides, subversive and constructive side. I can only demonstrate that there are a lot of ideas, a lot of experience the colleagues have brought together and studied. But we have but the reception of us is very low, and also the reception of government and the people, they have to make the decisions. So in this slide, we make a difference between the defense by military, though we highlight it by the motto, high price for entrance. This is usually the idea of military defense. You must pay a high price if you enter my country, if you put your leg 1 meter in my country. But the other side, and the alternative is, I refuse a little bit to say it, but to let the enemy in your country, but make it very difficult for the enemy and the aggressor and the occupator to stabilize his position as an occupator. So you see, we have three letters, A, B, and C, and let us focus to the right side. High price of existence. There are three fields of struggle. One field is the occupied country. The other field is the country of the occupator, and the third is the world, the public. And you cannot focus only the country that is occupied. So this is, of course, the main problem to deal with the occupator, the aggressor. but they are also the country of the aggressor, and there are people. They are claqueurs. They are interested in this aggression, but also a fraction of people. They are against that, and also a fraction between. They actually don't know where they should put their position, against or for. And so you have to convince these people to be against the aggression. So just now also in Russia, this is a process, and more people are aware that this is not only a special operation, this is really aggression against the Ukraine and the Ukraine people. So although on the left picture, on the left side, you have to do a lot of things in B, not only in A, also in B and also in C. So let me finish my lecture. I have to apologize for my poor English, but I hope I can tell you the main topics. So at the very end, I would like to talk a little bit about spirituality of nonviolence. So the main point of nonviolence is to look for a vacuum, to make the room between the aggressor and you a little bit bigger. It doesn't mean that you will give him, you allow him to do with yourself whatever he wants. No, you only works for a space between you and me. But what is the base of this dealing with the problem? To lower the arm, to go 1 meter back. This is an activity. This is not passivity. This is a high form of activity. Actually, it means that you see the first here you see 3 pictures. The first ignorance. The first picture should show ignorance of the conflict. To ignore it, but you know this is not a solution of conflict. In the other case, you deal with the other person, both by dealing with violence. But the third picture, this is the picture I prefer. You open the space, you work for vacuum because of trust in a third. Because you trust in a third, not only believe in God, you trust in a third. You trust in my mother language, religious mother language is to trust in God, that God act between these 2 parties. Third, you see, is cursive. It's not like 1 and 2. I put it in a cloud, yeah, but it means actually you cannot say anything about this. You only can trust that this third will help to heal the situation, to solve the conflict. I can only tell you a little bit at the very end about my religion and my religiosity. So it's very linked on the Old Testament and the New Testament. In the Old Testament, you can find a tradition that the prophets criticize trust in horses. Horses means not the horses like you like in Wild West or so. Then horses means weapons. Though the horses were brought by sea people to Canaan, to Palestine, and this is what was like nuclear weapons at this time. It makes a huge difference if you fight by sitting on a horse or you are only a walker, yeah, with a sword, yeah. So the prophets, and you can find a lot of such pleas are against horses. Remember, soldiers were followed you when you left Egypt, yeah, by horses, yeah, and the soldiers and horses were killed by the sea, yeah, to protect you. So horses actually is also an impasse, and it's not allowed to trust in gods like by wood, made by wood, and not to trust on horses. You see, this prophet Hosea has criticized to leave God by trust in horses and trust in small figures, so on. This is the same, yeah. So, and I will show you there's a line to the New Testament when Jesus is riding on a donkey, not on a horse, because horse means a weapon. So this is not because Jesus likes poorness. Very often I hear it in churches, and I can read it in texts and interpretations and exegesis of this kind of Jesus. He is riding a donkey because he wants to demonstrate the alternative. By a donkey you cannot find, because a donkey resists to go if you want it, and it's going if you want to stop it. So donkey is per definition not helpful for war. It's a symbol against war. So we can see through the whole Bible the criticism of the critics of war. So some years ago, Liu Chang and me traveled to and visited colleagues, also Lester Kurtz. He is one of the of our group and the creator of this webinar and also this cooperation. We traveled to America to visit him, and by the way, we went to a museum of modern art in Boston, and there we could find this picture. We brought it before in our book, but during our travel, we how can I say, we had the fun, really the fun to this picture in reality. And you see here also 1 and 2. One part is black, the other part is white, and there's not a cloud. In our book it is a cloud, but here's an angel, much more bigger than the two parts. Soldiers, you see weapons on the floor, but also very interesting, by the way, part points in the white clothes of the one part. At white you cannot see it, but white points in the dark. So you have the enemies actually have also parts of the other. Actually, they don't know. Yeah, but you see, this is the angel of mediation. He brought, this is a third, and I used to say, and we used to say, the third in between. But the third, I usually use the word God, but you also can say Allah. But in the Jewish people, they have a word. Actually, I am not allowed to use it, but you know it. And this word for God means that there is anything. There is anything. There's something. Actually, the word is being. You cannot say anything about this being, But our problem is if we trust in this being or not. Are we able to open the room to work for a vacuum that this and mobilize this third? The name for this makes no sense. It's not the important point. The names makes no sense, but the actually the thing, I can say the thing make a sense. And so I will finish my speech with some terms for this third power and ciphers of transcendence. The father of constructive, of how say humanistic psychology, Carl Rogers created the word constructive potential. And my question is, if I am ready to trust in this constructive potential between you and me, in a personal situation, also on the level of in the macrocosmos of political interaction. Or Erich Fromm used and perhaps created, I don't know, but he used the term biophilia, means the I love, bios, the life. Or Václav Havel refused to use the word God, but he is talking about the absolute horizon of being. And my question is, am I trust on the absolute horizon of being? So we can also talk about the same question by using way, by Tao, or heaven by Confucius, or nirvana by Buddhists. Or we can talk about a term Gandhi loved, satyagraha. It means the trust on truth, the trust on truth. And truth is a third between you and me. Or Modimo, I learned it, Modimo, George, perhaps you and other guys from Africa know it, from South Africa. I read it, that in a special group, they trust in Modimo. It means it's a power who brings animals together in one field, who brings animals together in one field, and in a fence, who makes fences around the people. Although, and Modimo is who bring people together, like the animals, the sheeps. And yeah, you know, Allah God, and the other term I don't want to speak out. So this is I would like to say the core of non-violence and the core of non-violent action. And the question, do I trust in this potential? Thank you so much for your attention and for participation.
Thank you very much indeed, Egon, for this wonderful presentation on the basic facets of peace studies. And I would like now to ask, probably Liu Cheng might have something to say, and then I will ask members of the floor, the audience, the participants, to make a comment or ask a question. Liu Cheng, would you like to say something?
Yeah, thank you, George. Hello, everybody.
Hello.
So,
Hello.
yeah, hello. It's great to Egon to talk about his speech. As he said, we finished this book, depends on our 5 or maybe 6 years to finish. But today, you just use 1 hour to highlight the main topic of this book. It's really wonderful. Yeah, actually, I don't have more was to end. But the one thing I wanted to say, our comic book is based on our understanding the war and the peace. Why peace studies come up? Because of the war. But what war happened? Because we want peace. But the war is the invention, is old invention in the past, in history. But today is 21st century. We need a new invention to instead of the old invention, the war. So in non-violence is the conception of our book. So today, peace studies, peace research, peace education, we must find a lot of potential, the peace potential in 21st century, in the globalization, because in the globalization, we have a lot of new things or peace potential to compare with the in the history. So this is what we wanted to do. So this 5 or 6 years, we finished this book. It's based on a lot of lectures, a lot of discussion, a lot of traveling in China, beyond China, a lot of different countries. So we invited a lot of people, especially the young generation, to rethinking the ideas between the war, violence, and non-violence and peace. So, and Egon is really give a really great lecture about the new idea, new suggestion to rethinking about what is peace, what is non-violence, and how to achieve peace by peaceful means. Thank you very much. Also, I want to share a good news. Egon visited Nanjing many times. We know each other more than 10 years, but he visited China, Nanjing, more than 20 times. But because COVID-19, we stopped, how to say, in-person discussion more than 3 years. But fortunately, in summer, Egon will visit Nanjing once again, and he will stay in Nanjing about 3 months. So maybe we will continue to discussing more things. Maybe we will finish another book for peace. Thank you very much again.
Thank you very much indeed, Liu. And any question from the participants or comments? Yes, please,
Hello.
Frank. Yes, Frank.
Hi. Thank you for Professor Egon for the wonderful presentation. I come from Kenya. I reside in Nairobi. We have had issues of political stability due to economic issues and the legitimacy of the past election. And if we try peaceful protest, we are met with total violence. Our police, our military are put on alert, especially the police and paramilitary. When you walk around, it's so intimidating. And sometimes as a counter, they commit violence themselves and then put it that the demonstrators are the ones violating. So it is illegal to demonstrate, but our constitutions allows for legal, peaceful demonstrations. And that is what I've seen so much in most of the African countries that I've stayed in, that you cannot have free, peaceful demonstration. The government always takes very high hand. You see what is happening now in Sudan. It was almost a similar scenario. And it's always just almost total chaos. And how can we have really peaceful demonstrations, peaceful protests, like in the European and Western countries. Thank you.
Oh, Frank, thank you very much. Actually, I cannot solve the problem. I have no idea, but I can only remember situations like you, also in Europe, also in Germany, all over the world. Everywhere is the same problem, and you have to look for a whole. You have to look for yeah. I really it's only I can only say you have to look for small chances, opportunities to solve the situation, and sometimes you have to the patience, also patience. So look to Czechoslovakia, yeah, you know, formally in 1968. They were in a similar situation like the Ukraine just now. So, and they had to make a decision, either to defend themselves, 1968, either to defend themselves against the Warsaw Pact soldiers and military, or to look for non-violent activities. In this case, only 70 people were killed in this time. But the country had to wait for liberation 2 decades till 1989. So two decades, 20 years, they have to live under communist empire and government. But nobody were killed, only 70 people. Otherwise, if they made the decision to defend themselves by weapons and so on, maybe uncountable thousands of people were killed. But the non-killed people could fight to liberate the country. So I think non-violence must be linked with patience and time. Sorry to say this, but this is really a sign of non-violence. So.
Yeah, thank you, Egon. I'll go to Afiz and then Thomas. Afiz, please.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for the wonderful presentation and for the wonderful work that you and Leo have done. It's a good work. I must commend that. Then let me quickly add to the issue of the Kenyan people protesting without ending in the war. And part of what Egon presented to us in a part that talked about creating space. So there is a graph that shows no violence, which is the third one, that you have to create space. Within that aspect, we can use that one as a way of a solution to the protest that leads to violence. So you have to create space for them. And the second one, part of the presentation also, talks about saying yes and no at the same time. Most of Africa protests, they're always saying no to things. They will never think about the yes. It is true that you don't want this. You are saying no to a particular policy by the government. What exactly policy are you trying to replace that? I think Egon has already explained that as well, that if you are saying no, always ready to say yes. Prescribe and explain what you want them to do as a policy, to form the part of the policy. So that's on that. Then my own view is that you made mention in the presentation, you talk about the peacekeeping as in form of UN defending the children in the world, that they set 10 years review. Now, my question is that How does UN intervene in keeping peace in the world and in keeping peace of the children? Then, because the case scenario of Nigeria of the Chibok there, I think they are children as well. I don't think we have any UN intervention in stopping the Boko Haram. I don't know if there's any modality of how we can approach UN to intervene, or what is the modus operandi of operation of the UN to intervene in peacekeeping in any country. That's my question. Then the second one, you talk about the 4 model, Hego, multi, inter, and trans. These 4 models, as I'm seeing it and as I'm viewing it, is going to erase what we call cultural identity, although you have already discussed about the cultural diversity. But my view is that what we actually need to work on is the ego. That is the bottom line, which you actually spend a lot of time to express and explain that. Then the last one I will ask is confederation instead of separation. I'm not clear enough what you mean by confederation. Is it that all the countries in the world will form a form of government that will be a center that will be controlling all the countries, or there is a separation? Then also in your discussion, you talk about the Ukraine. Now, what is the ultimate solution to the ongoing war between Russia and Ukraine? What are the steps that the UN is taking or that may likely take to stop the war? Thank you.
Oh my God, Aviz, thank you for your question, but actually it needs a whole seminary to give a responsible answer. I was looking to Hubert Heindl because of the first question. I think, Hubert, perhaps you can help me to give an answer to the first question of Aviz. So this gives me a little bit time to consider my answers to the others. But Aviz, I think I cannot answer you in this short time. But the first question I think is very interesting. And Hubert, you are in Africa. You're very experienced in a lot of decades. Yeah, perhaps you can answer much more better than me.
Thank you very much. I take the floor because it helps me to jump from Thomas and Mr. iPhone also, because I had also some remarks just waiting for the floor. We may not have time this time. Maybe also I'm not really trying to answer to Afe's questions, but to try to think to another third, as we're talking about the third dimension. I even linking with the question of Kenya demonstration and creating the space, as Afes also underlines. I think what I would like to continue in the discussion from these basics of Professor Egon is to develop also in the peace movement, demonstration in Kenya, you in Nigeria, wherever, in our program in Central African Republic, to create scenarios. Because if we have the vision of tabooizing war to 2075, then we need to define steps and scenarios to reach it. It will not switch from 74 to 75, this tabooizing. There will be steps, and we, as the peace movement and peace activists, we can develop this kind of scenarios. In Kenya, it means to develop scenarios how to deal with these violent police and paramilitary forces. So yeah, I did my lecture some 2 or 3 weeks ago, how the peace builders could also influence the security forces, and to train them even to understand how they are acting and reacting on a situation and on state interests to uprise again the peaceful demonstrations or the non-violent interests.
Yeah,
So
thank you, Hubert.
there are so many examples, and that is what I would just to say in launching this idea of step-by-step scenarios for creating this space, for making visible this third element in time. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I would like to make a suggestion, if you agree with me, Egon. We listen to Thomas and Sean, and then you can make, a conclusion, and maybe some of the questions might be answered. Thomas, please, and then Sean.
Yes, okay, so thank you very much, Egon, for your talk. It was a brilliant overview of what Peace Studies is doing. I had a couple of comments and questions. I liked the way you brought in at the end the transpersonal side of peacemaking with your chart of the names of God and so on. And I spent, 30 years wondering how we can channel that, what you call the space of the third, into conflict zones. So I've done a lot of work with interfaith stuff. I created a multi-faith mediation service, theological work on interfaith stuff. That's one thing. But I'm also involved with the arts. I'm a poet, and I believe the arts and the work of artists can create, they can channel that transcendental force into conflict zones. I know of a chap, an African from Kenya, who won a prize for peace. He's a photographer, and he went around making photographs of conflict, using the arts to shock people into realizing the horrors of war. So, for instance, if instead of having like a conventional demonstration, waving banners, and the police react angrily and come and attack you, go and book a cafe and have a poetry night of dissident peace poetry. Have a musical demonstration for peace. Get some, get a chamber orchestra or some African indigenous musicians making music for peace, because they can't stop the arts. And I want to just say, Egon, if you don't know, in the classical world, there was a thing called the Delphic Games. It took place 2 years in the intervals between the Olympic Games. We've revived this in the 1990s. The Delphic Games exist for all the countries in the world, every country in Africa, Asia, China as well, all of Europe, to send a delegation to the International Delphic Games, like with the Olympics. And I think if we channel our energy from violence and confrontation into the art, because your talk celebrated culture, you're talking about using culture to celebrate difference. Anyway, I just want to, the president of the Delphic Games lives in Berlin. I'd like to introduce you, Egon, to him. Will you go and meet him and talk to him? I'm the educational coordinator of the Delphic Games, so I'd like to say to anyone on this call, if you have an interest in using the arts for peace, then please get in touch, through George. So that's really, I don't know, did you know about the Delphic Games, Egon? That's my question anyway. Go to Sean.
Yes. Yeah, Sean, please. Thank you very much, Thomas. Please unmute.
Oh, thank you very much, George. I took my hand out because I prefer to give the time to the speaker. And thank you very much for such an interesting overview, Egon. Thank you.
Thank you. So Egon, please. Please unmute.
I'm so sorry, Afis, that I cannot answer. But we can email. This could be a good solution. Please let's stay in touch by email and to continue our discussion. Thank you so much. To Thomas, I will finish by a story. Leo Chang and me, we attended IBRA conference in Japan, and we listened a lot of lectures and discussions. And at the very end, hey, hi Leo, at the very end, you remember, you told me, let's go to the other session. There is peace and arts. So we went to we went to this session, and this was really a highlight. Leo, do you remember in IBRA conference? Though this is the intention of you comment, Thomas, to discover the power of arts in this movement. Yeah, but actually I want to remember this, and also thank you, Hubert. I really was thinking during my whole speech on your lecture about this peace research and peace education you are doing, and peace activism in your institution, University of Peace. Yeah, this is what I mean. I can identify myself totally with this kind of thinking. And this is also a late answer to Frank, to experience by scenarios and also by doing. Yeah, by doing. Even it is all, there are small steps. My teacher in physics told us, if a fly is jumping to a ship, a huge ship, I don't know, cruiser, a ship, this ship will sink a little bit. By physical perspective, it's right. And my father was also the name for bees. He got honey by bees. And you know, if a huge population of bees have to go forward, one bee after another bee have to leave the tree, the branch. So, and you also know much more better than me, a last grass on the back of a camel will break the back. So this is my answer, my late answer also to Frank. And in continuation of Hubert, perhaps we must be one bee, and the other bee can follow up, so we can move the world only by this kind of steps. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Egon, for this wonderful presentation, for the discussion. Thank you, everyone, for coming on this call. And so I'd like to invite you to join us next week. We meet every Wednesday at the same time. And as we mentioned at the beginning of this session today, we also are planning to have a conference. So I'm sure that we'll have enough time for discussion. Thank you very much indeed, also to our colleagues in Argentina for the technical assistance. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Thank you, George. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.